to hit 3 dots before sending the next letter. This is a representation of the number of the Morse code dots and dashes in the word Lucifer, meaning the name of the devil. You will see that it consists of letters requiring 15 dots to send them, and 6 dashes, each of which is equal to 3 dots, totaling 18 dots. 15 dots plus 18 dots obviously equals 33. Just another strange coincidence, I am sure. The number 13 is also a significant number to the Masonic Lodge. This is a page from the April 1960 edition of a Masonic magazine entitled The New Age. Its name has been changed to the Scottish Rite Journal, in which the Masons discuss the mystical number 13. Notice that the top line says Masonic symbols in a $1 bill. The article says that the number 13, used repeatedly in the Great Seal of the United States, was not a coincidence. They wrote that the number has a significant Masonic connection. The article says that there were 13 leaves in the olive branches in the Great Seal, 13 bars and stripes, 13 arrows, 13 stars in the green crest, and 13 layers of stone in the pyramid. This means that the Masons are claiming that the number 13 has a Masonic importance. Now, there are some that claim that the reason that the number 13 is significant on both sides of the Great Seal is because there were 13 states in the original Union of States that formed the federal government. But it appears as if the number has a hidden significance, and that those who founded this nation waited until there were precisely 13 and not 12 or 14 states before they created the United States. But the Masons are claiming the number as one of their own, and shows, at least in this one instance, that the Masons were directly involved in the founding of this nation, and that one of the reasons we can know that is because of their interest in the number 13. But before we examine the number 13, there's another reason that the Founding Fathers selected the American Eagle as our national symbol. And that is the fact that the two words American Eagle have exactly 13 letters in them. But this is not the only hidden use of the number 13. The words E Pluribus Union, one of the nation's Latin slogans, reportedly translated into one out of many, also have 13 letters in the words. On the pyramid side of the Great Seal, the two words Annuit Coeptus, meaning the announcement of or the birth of, also have 13 letters in them. There are 13 examples of the letter A on the front of the dollar bill, like finding the letter A in the words federal, states, and America, etc. There are 13 courses of stone on the pyramid. The words "In God We Trust" on the back of the dollar bill have 12 letters in them, and if you add the number of the word 1 to the 12, you get 13. The reverse of the dollar bill contains 13 examples of the number 13, like 13 olive leaves, 13 vertical stripes, etc. And the number 33, I believe, signifying the 33 degrees of the Masonic Lodge, shows up frequently as well. The words "the United States of America" at the top of both sides of the dollar bill have 24 letters in them, and the words $1 have a total of 9. Add the two together and you get 33. The word "one" has 9 parts in them, meaning 2 in the letter O, 3 in the letter N, and 4 in the letter E. If you total the shadows behind the letters, they total 11. If you add the 9 plus the 11, you will get a total of 20 units. Then you add the number 1 itself and the 12 letters in the words "In God We Trust," and you get, strangely enough, a total of 33. So the Masons have concealed their involvement in the dollar bill all over it. And only a few Americans know the true meaning of these symbols. This is a drawing of a popular flag utilized by the Americans in the Revolution of 1776. The words in the phrases "and appeal to God" and "don't tread on me" both have 13 letters in them. Please notice the snake wrapped around the tree. I will explain its significance a little later. But there are other concealed Masonic symbols in this flag. The words in evergreen tree, meaning what appears to be an evergreen tree in the drawing, have 13 letters in them. So it was not a coincidence that these phrases have significance to the Masonic Lodge and have symbols, where were symbols selected for the flag. And by the way, the "an appeal to God" and "don't tread on me" also have 13 letters on them. Another series of hidden symbolism occurred in the selection of July the 4th, the founding date of this nation. The words have 13 letters in them. But there is another more important concealed symbol in that date, which I will explain later. The year 1776 has a hidden symbolism as well. The last two numbers in the date, meaning the 7 and the 6, when added together, total 13. As it is being shown, this is no coincidence, it is symbolic. The Founding Fathers waited precisely 13 years between 1776 and 1789 to form this nation's first government. George Washington, a very visible member of the Masons, had 12 other generals on his staff. 12 plus himself equals 13. A total of 13 people worked on the Great Seal of the United States. The Navy of the United States had a committee of 13 controlling all naval affairs, and the first fleet of ships had precisely 13 ships in it. The Confederate flag of the South, utilized during the latter stages of the American Civil War, had 13 stars on it. And if you presume that each star stood for an individual state, as it did in the American flag, there should have been only 11 stars in the Confederate flag because there were only 11 states in the Confederacy. This flag was adopted as the flag of the Confederacy in 1863, about midway in the Civil War, which lasted from 1861 to 1865. There is no way that the 11 states were anticipating the addition of 2 more states to their cause, so that there would have been 1 star for each state. 11 states started the Civil War in the Confederacy, and 11 states finished it. There is one more startling bit of evidence to consider about the involvement of the Masons in the planning of the Civil War. This is a map of the eastern part of the United States, showing a red line over the 33rd degree northern latitude. Latitudes circle the globe parallel to the equator, which means that there are 2 33rd degree latitudes, one called the 33rd degree northern latitude and the other called the 33rd degree southern latitude. The city of Charleston, South Carolina is underneath the 33rd degree northern latitude. And because it is, the Masons created their first 33rd degree temple there. And it was at Fort Sumter, located in the port of Charleston, South Carolina, where the South fired its first shots of the war. Just another interesting coincidence, I am certain. So one can only wonder how much more involvement the Masons had in the creation and continuation of the Civil War. For those who believe that the Masons do not involve themselves in wars and revolutions, this quotation from Albert Pike's Morals and Dogma should explain that they do, page 330. He wrote, "We hatch no premature revolutions. We hatch no premature revolutions." Notice that he did not say that the Masons hatch no revolutions. He wrote that they hatch no premature revolutions. That means that we hatch revolutions when the time is ripe. And to show that this is a correct interpretation of Mr. Pike's comment, one has to only refer to page 24 of his book to read this. The Masonry aided in bringing about the French Revolution of 1789. And to show the involvement of the Masons in foreign affairs, the two words United Nations have 13 letters as well. And here is a more contemporary use of the number 13 in America. This is a photograph of President Bill Clinton taken in the White House. The symbol off to the right of the photograph, I guess more in the middle, shaped like a seashell on top of the bookcase, has 13 parts inside the overall design. The number 13 is concealed everywhere, including inside the White House itself. The Masons even concealed their symbols in the layout of the streets of Washington, D.C., the nation's capital. George Washington, this nation's first president and a member of the Masons, hired a French Mason, Major Pierre Charles L'Enfant, an officer who had served with President Washington during the American Revolution, to lay out the streets of the city. So the city was laid out by a member of the Masons. To understand the hidden symbolism in the city streets, it becomes important to study the Masonic symbols known as the square and the compass. A square is a piece of metal cut so as to be in the form of a 90-degree right angle. The compass is, of course, a device that consists of two legs formed at the top used to draw circles. The letter G in the center stands for Gnosis, and not God, as is claimed by some Masons. And Gnosis is Latin for knowledge, meaning spiritual knowledge about who the true God is that the Masons worship as their God. We shall examine that statement a little later as well. When combined in this manner, these become the two symbols of the Masonic Lodge. Once the observer turns the square and compass sideways, then compares them to the layout of the streets of Washington, D.C., the map will reveal some of its secrets, because the city is laid out with many of the squares, angled lines, and circles consistent with the square and compass of the Masonic Lodge. This is a photograph of part of a map of the nation's capital. The Capitol building is shown in red on the right. It appears as if the square and compass has been laid out in the streets around and on top of the Capitol building itself, shown in the gray area to the right. It certainly appears that the Masons are attempting to conceal the fact that they consider the Capitol building to be under their control. And this is a layout of the original, a photocopy rather, of the original layout. You will notice numerous squares and compasses designed into the city. And to show you that the Masons created this nation, let me show you this drawing of George Washington laying the cornerstone of the Capitol building on September the 18th, 1793. Notice that nearly all of the other participants are wearing their Masonic jewelry and aprons. And on the 200th anniversary of the laying of the cornerstone, the Masons repeated the ceremony with Senator Strom Thurmond, a 33rd degree Mason, shown here under the tripod to the left, doing the honors. So it appears as if Albert Pike was correct when he wrote in his book entitled Morals and Dogma, "The world will soon come to us," meaning the Masons, "for its sovereigns," apparently meaning its governmental leaders, and pontiffs, apparently meaning its religious leaders. We shall be rulers over the masters of the world. So the Masons will be the secret power behind the religions and the governments of the world. It appears that the American people have been, quote, coming to us, unquote, meaning the Masons, for over 200 years for its sovereigns. End of part 3. Please hold for part 4. Part 4 of 4. But the Masonic involvement in the history of this nation does not end here. There is more to be learned about their involvement in the founding of this nation. If you multiply the number 13 by itself, meaning 13 by 13 obviously, the result is 169. If you subtract the number from the year of the founding of this nation, in other words, 1776, you will arrive at the year 1607, the date that the first settlers arrived in America. If you add the number 169 to 1776, you will get the year 1945. The year that Harry Truman, the President of the United States, dropped the 2 atomic bombs on Christians in Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan. By the way, Harry Truman did not have to drop those 2 bombs to end World War II with Japan. He knew that Japan was trying to surrender. That is all documented in my book entitled The Unseen Hand. Now, if you number the number of days, or count the number of days, between July the 4th, 1945, and August the 6th, 1945, the day they dropped the first atomic bomb on Hiroshima, you will discover that they total 33 days. And in one more coincidence, if you add the number of the letters and numbers in August the 6th, 1945, you will find that they total 33. Harry Truman, by the way, was by the way of the strangest of coincidences, the 33rd President of the United States. He was a 32nd degree when he decided to drop the bombs when he didn't have to, but was made an honorary 33rd degree just a few months later. This is an official portrait of the President dressed in his Masonic attire. The Ku Klux Klan was founded in 1867, and if you will notice, there are 3 K's in their name. K is the 11th letter in the alphabet, so once again, 3 times 11 is 33. Another strange coincidence. World War I ended on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, and the sum of the 3 11s is obviously 33. This is a picture of NASA's orbiter Discovery landing at their Kennedy Space Center in Florida on runway 33. Many of the nation's astronauts have been members of the Masonic Lodge. There are 33 balloon floats in the Macy's Thanksgiving Parade. There are 33 cars in the starting grid for an Indianapolis Speedway 500-mile race. Let me now try to offer an explanation of why these conspirators revere the number 33. This is a drawing of the human backbone, and if you count the number of the vertebrae, there are 32 of them. The skull is attached to the backbone, and it would be the 33rd vertebrae if it was one. The human skull is the home of the mind, man's ability to think. And these conspirators want to be totally free to determine for themselves what is right and wrong. So that is why they revere the number 33. The number 33 stands for the seat of their ability to reason, to freely think for themselves. And the next slide might be partial corroboration that the number 33 has something to do with the human skull. This is a woman from the Padang area of Indonesia, and their culture asks some of the women to put rings around the neck as they age. However, no woman is ever asked to put on more than 32 rings, meaning the head would become the number 33. Now, I don't know how they learned that there were 32 vertebrae in the human backbone, but if they did it for this reason we've been talking about, then the head would be, of course, the 33rd vertebrae. Once again, just another strange coincidence. But perhaps this is the most pertinent explanation of why the conspirators revere the number 33. This is a map of the area in Iraq around the city of Baghdad. The red line represents the 33rd degree northern latitude, just a few miles north of the city of Babylon, the home of the ancient mystery religion. That means that it can be said that the 33rd degree northern latitude runs through the city of Babylon, since each latitude is several miles wide between the two neighboring latitude lines. And I think that is the real reason that the Masons place such importance on the number 33. There are certainly many other instances of the use of symbols in the numbers 13, 32, and 33. But since they were only coincidences, I do not want to spend too much time on the others that I have found. But there are certainly many, but I just wanted to show you a few because I do not believe that they are coincidences. And to show you that the Masons are major players in the past, let me show you confirmation of this fact from two quotations taken from two books written by Manly P. Hall, one of the major writers in support of the Masonic Lodge because he was a 33rd degree Mason. Masonry is the most powerful organization in the land. It is an ordainer of kings. Its hand has shaped the destinies of worlds. But let me continue to discuss their involvement in this nation's past. The streets of Washington, D.C. contain another hidden symbol, one that must be explained first. The five-pointed star is a common symbol utilized in a variety of ways. The star on the left is a photograph of one of the stars in the flag of the United States, where each of the 50 of them symbolizes one of the 50 states. That star is placed with one of its 5 points up and two of its points down. However, the star can also be reversed, so that only 1 point is down and two are up, and that of course is represented by the star on the right. This star, with 1 point down, is a symbol of the Eastern Star, a Masonic organization for women. And here is the Eastern Star shown on a fez, a hat apparently worn by members of this Masonic group. This difference between the two stars are explained in a book entitled History of Freemasonry and Concordant Orders, published in 1891 by a series of 78 high-ranking members of the Masonic Lodge. One of their members, William R. Singleton, a 33rd degree Mason, wrote about the star in his article entitled The Divine Plan. This is that portion of the article showing the two stars, one with 1 point up and the other with 1 point down. Notice that the drawing on the right shows the head of a goat inside of it, obviously referring to the goat of Mendes, a symbol of the devil. This is how the article described the two stars. This star, having 5 points, 5 rays rather, represents God. All that is pure, virtuous, and good, when represented with 1 point upward. But when turned with 1 point down, it represents evil. All that is opposed to the good, pure, and virtuous. It represents the goat of Mendes. This is a drawing of the goat of Mendes shown on the cover of a book about witchcraft written by a practicing witch. Notice that the drawing shows a goat head on a human body. Notice also that the goat has female breasts, indicating that the goat is bisexual. This thought about the 5-pointed star is repeated on page 101 of the same book. When the star elevates 2 of its points, it represents Satan, or the goat of the mysteries. And here is the 5-pointed star laid out in the streets north of and above the White House, the box at the low middle of the map, the home of the President of the United States. By the way, the black rectangle shown on the top center is the 33rd degree Masonic Temple in Washington, D.C. I'm sure it is a coincidence that it is precisely 13 blocks north of the White House. Now I would like to discuss the connection between the number 13, the star, and Satan, also known as Lucifer or the devil. Standeo, in his book entitled The Cosmic Conspiracy, stated, 13 is the value assigned to represent Satan. But there are other explanations of the number 13, one of which was offered by Manly P. Hall, the Mason, who said that there were 12 great religions in the world, and the 13th was the one concealed inside the other 12. What I believe he was saying was that there was a secret worship of a particular god in each of the 12 other great religions. And my research has indicated to me that that particular god concealed in the 12 great religions of the world is Lucifer, also called Satan, or the devil. I would like to explain what this means. Let's say that all the believers in Osiris, the Egyptian sun god, are inside the circle. Everyone else is outside the circle because they do not believe in Osiris. Inside the circle is a small percentage of believers, shown by the red dot in the center, who share a common secret. And that secret is that Osiris is in truth Lucifer, also called Satan, or the devil. Those who believe this are called adepts, princes, or illuminated ones, and their task is to keep the secret from the rest of the believers. This is what Mr. Hall was saying. And I would like to add my own opinion as to why the number 13 is significant to these conspirators. 6 is the number of man, and 7 is the number of completion or perfection. If the two numbers are added together, the total is 13, or perfected man. This secret worship believes that through it man can become perfect. In fact, the conspiracy believes that we common people have progressed to the point of being Homo sapiens man through evolution. And they, the illuminated ones, have evolved higher into a higher form of mankind called Homo noeticus man. The word noetic is Greek for the mind or the intellect. So the number 13 contains a secret, hidden, occult meaning, and that is why the number 13 is significant and symbolic. There is one more significant insight as to why this nation's founding fathers chose the date of July the 4th to declare America's independence from Great Britain. The old Julian calendar was changed in the year 1582 by an order of Pope Gregory the 13th. I wonder if it is important to note that this Pope, the 13th one to change his name to Gregory, was the one to change the calendar. I'm certain it's just another coincidence. The acknowledged reason was because the old calendar was 11 days behind the sun. In other words, the old calendar was no longer accurate in measuring the solar year. So the astronomers were having difficulty in measuring the time it took for the Earth to make one complete revolution around the sun. So in October of 1582, the old June the 23rd became July the 4th. And to explain this, I would like to explain what this means. And just so you will understand, I've exaggerated the distances on the horizon between the setting of the sun on various days. If you were to mark the horizon every evening as the sun sets, you would notice that it appears to move up and then down as it sets each night. The sun moves south each night until December 22nd, and then it sets at the same spot each night for 3 days. And then on December 25th each year, the sun starts moving north again. It sets at a site which is north of the setting sun the night before. And then on June the 21st or 22nd, the sun stops again for 3 nights. So June the 23rd is 2 days after the summer solstice, the day that the sun appears to be stopped after making its way north of the equator. it would be the next night to the last night before the sun starts moving south again. The sun worshippers celebrate on the night when the sun starts its direction in the opposite direction, because they are pleased that the sun did not die in the 3 days. So June the 23rd and 24th are nights of celebration, because it was a day of recognition for those who thought the sun, and therefore the sun god, died on each June the 22nd. That day ended at sunset, so after that moment, the next day started, and this was the day the sun actually started its journey home. Babylonians in the past celebrated that night by lighting bonfires to Baal, their sun god. And Americans light fires in the sky called fireworks after sunset on July the 4th. Observers will quickly note that this is the only American holiday that is traditionally celebrated by fireworks. So here we see a connection between the celebration of July the 4th and sun worship. So the Founding Fathers concealed a holiday to the sun god in the choice of the date of July the 4th to declare their independence from Great Britain. It appears that many things once thought unexplainable have an explanation after all. One must only look. The Great Seal is represented on the back of the dollar bill, contains other symbols that have generally not been explained to the American people. I'd like to finish my study of the eye above the pyramid. Manly P. Hall, the 33rd degree Mason, and perhaps the greatest writer in history in support of the mystery religion, wrote this: "The eye above the pyramid represents the radiant emblem of the great architect of the universe, the title of the Masonic God." The following are 4 quotes about eyes as symbols from writers studying the issue. The eye was also the symbol of Osiris. Osiris, the sun and principle of good. Osiris was the chief god of the Egyptians. Osiris was the sun. An eye in honor of the great eye of the universe, the sun. So here is the first mention of the eye being both a symbol of the sun and, in fact, of the god who is symbolized by the sun. So it appears that the eye above the pyramid on the back of the American dollar bill is the eye of Osiris, a symbol of the sun god. One can only conclude that our founding fathers knew what they were doing. Not only did they conceal their ancient secret religion in the Great Seal of the United States, they also concealed it in the name of this nation. This next subject is perhaps the most controversial point I will be discussing in this presentation, so please get ready for it. Please remember that I asked you to be a member of a jury and that you had to be open, because this is very controversial, and I would like you to at least hear it and then make your own decision as to whether or not you will accept it. So providing you with that warning, I will now proceed. The first thing I would like to discuss is this statement in the Bible, because it will be the key to understanding what I will be discussing for the next few minutes. Revelation 12, chapter 12, verse 9. That old serpent called the devil was Satan, and Satan was cast out into the earth. And the reason this is significant is because whole cultures all over the earth have been worshiping the serpent or the snake in their religions. So please keep that in mind as we examine the following evidence. William Josiah Sutton, in his book entitled The Illuminati 666, added another very important piece of the puzzle to the story. This is what he wrote. The ancient Mayans, meaning the Mayan Indian tribe of the Yucatan in Mexico, a peninsula on the northeast side of Mexico, worshipped the serpent god under the name of Kan. Here we find the origin of the American word canny, shrewd, or serpent-like. The Babylonians worshipped Can or Kan, the serpent, and Val, the god of fire. The Romans combined the words into Vulcan, the god of fire, from whence comes our word volcano. This seems to be how the Mayans and the Mexicans named their gods. They too combined two words to describe their serpent god. Hence, Kulkul means beautiful bird, and Kan means serpent. Kulkulkan means bird serpent in the Mayan language. This is the exact same meaning for Quetzalcoatl, the Mexican god. The cosmic symbol for Quetzalcoatl was a feathered serpent. The statement that Quetzalcoatl was the god of the Mexicans was partially confirmed in this photograph of an Indian dancing with a snake in his mouth. The caption underneath the picture reads in part, "The snake represents the Aztec god Quetzalcoatl." There was one similarity between all of these cultures. They worshipped the serpent god. I would like to start the discussion with this drawing that shows the Mayan Queen Mu as a child consulting the soothsayer. It shows the queen is receiving the words from their serpent god, but through the mouth of a soothsayer. The queen is shown on the left side of the drawing inside the red rectangle with her left hand on her face as she is seated facing the soothsayer. She is depicted as a young child, perhaps in her early teens. The soothsayer is shown in the green rectangle as she is seated in front of the queen with what appears to be a little table between them. She is shown in front of two other women and two huts. Behind the soothsayer is the yellow rectangle. In the yellow rectangle is a huge serpent which towers above the scene. Notice that it has its mouth open, and if it is speaking to the soothsayer, as if it is speaking to the soothsayer and the queen as well. The book that included this drawing in the pages said that the winged serpent behind her represented the protective genius of the Mayan Empire. So the snake, serpent, protected the Mayans. This is a representation of Prince Ko of the Mayans in the heat of battle. His head is near the center of the drawing, and behind him and taller than it appears to be the winged serpent, also representing the protective genius of the Mayan Empire. So the serpent was an important part of the worship of the Mayan and Aztec people, which means that it was an important part of the South American culture before the latest or the earliest Europeans landed in America. The American people have been told by the majority of the historians who have examined this nation's past that the name America was named after Amerigo Vespucci, supposedly the navigator for Christopher Columbus. But there is an alternative explanation. William Still, in his book entitled New World Order, offers the following explanation. The name America may be the product of secret societies. In an 1895 magazine named Lucifer, James Price gave an insight into the meaning of the word America. He said that the supreme god of the Mayan culture of Central America, known as Quetzalcoatl elsewhere, was known as Amaru in Peru. Amaru's territory was known as Amaracu. According to Price, from the latter comes the word America. America is translated land of the serpent. Mr. Price was not the only one to make this claim. Robert B. Stacy Mudd wrote a book entitled Atlantis, Mother of Empires, in which he attempts to make the claim that the Mayans came from the nation known as Atlantis, an island that allegedly sank during an earthquake. Now, this is not the place to examine his charges, but he does draw another startling conclusion. Quetzalcoatl, the Mayan god, was known as Kukulkan amongst the Aztecs. In Peru, he was known as Amaru. But all of these names have an identical meaning, the feathered serpent. From the Peruvian name comes America. This is a photograph of a feathered serpent in the 33rd degree Masonic Temple in Washington, D.C. Notice that the head of the serpent has wings. It is a feathered serpent. The feathered serpent would have flown from the old world to the new world, meaning America. By the way, notice that the swastika in the ornamental metalwork above the feathered serpent shown under the two red arrows. The swastika is also a symbol of the sun god and may be drawn two ways, one the reverse of the other. One way is called the evil swastika and the other is called the good swastika. This is a photograph of the swastika, the official symbol of Adolf Hitler's Nazi party. Notice that this is the evil form of the swastika, and it has been reported that Hitler knew the difference between the two forms of the symbol and that he intentionally selected this, the evil form. It was under this sun god symbol utilized by Adolf Hitler in the war that his government started that Hitler killed 53 million people under the sign of the sun god, the concealed Lucifer, Satan, or the devil. Mr. Still adds one of the thoughts of another writer who claims to know the truth about the